Well, thank you for your patience. um, I've developed a quick quiz of 16 multiple choice or true false questions, primarily over the content of chapters 1 and 2. And I'll make another quiz and then we'll catch up. This is really a quick review. There are 3 questions on there. Basically from just class discussions. I didn't put any of the Wind in the Willows in this time. Maybe I'll do that another time. The other thing I've done now is when you open up the quiz, um, you'll get all the answers and there'll be a little jumble to them. That's to be a little challenge. They won't be in the order right through the book. But you can keep the link open as long as you want. You don't have to do it all right away. Just keep making sure that that you do some things with it, or it'll close down on you, and I can't control that. But what I've done is, for each question that is from the Essentials of Children's Literature, I put the page number where you will find the correct responses, and I'll give them here to you, so that everybody should do a fine job on the quiz. Having fun with the class. Sorry for that illness that really set me behind, but I'll give you till Wednesday to take this quiz, and meanwhile probably I'll make another one and then they'll overlap so that you'll be able to catch up with everything. The language is taken directly from the text, so that you should be able to figure out where you are and what is the best answer. There aren't any what I would call trick questions involved. Now, I did say in class that the father of children's literature, he wrote a book. It was I said this as a alphabet book, and it was called the Orbis Sensilium Pictus, and it was 1658. And the really important thing about this book is it's generally acknowledged to be the first children's book. So Comenius, who I've also said it's not on the quiz, it is that he acknowledged the first children's book. But he also, said that to be good children's literature should be entertaining and edifying. And he also included the instruction for women, girls as well. Now, the first important publisher of children's literature, and he was in England, was John Newbery. Now, Newbery also wrote, but he put out a journal. He put little toys in it for boys and girls. One jacks and pin cushions or something. They were very gender specific, but everything's not possible in all periods of time. But we acknowledge him today as the we give an award every year to the best book, and that's the Newbery Awards for various categories. And we looked at the one that I read the first paragraph to you in class about the higher powers of Lucky, and that gets the Newbery Award. Also remember that I'm Dr. Bill Clementi, and I am the teacher. Now, there's in the first chapter, it talks about content in a book for children should not be treated in a style that is nostalgic. It could be hopeful, it could be suspenseful, it could be humorous, but you want to stay away from making it overly nostalgic, because the children are living what you used to live as an adult, and so they're not interested in looking at their lives with nostalgia. They have other goals in mind. Now, overall, we can think it's on page 4. Children's literature is good quality trade books for children from birth to adolescence, covering topics of relevance and interest to children of those ages through prose and poetry, fiction and nonfiction. That's our definition, our working definition for the class. Now, of course, one of the other things your text does is present a lot of research to support the changing ideas about children's literature, and they're always in flux. And one of the big books is Becoming a Nation of Readers, the landmark report on reading in the United States. And it concludes by saying that the single most important activity for building the knowledge required for eventual success in reading is reading aloud to children. Um, from the very beginning, is the foundation of literacy. Is the importance for reading to children, and that's why we, in a sense, if it's not supported at home, children don't, as they grow into adolescents and adults, don't have that kind of joy that comes from reading just because of books you like. And so engaging in personal reading is not valued in our society. Remember on page 8, they talk about illiteracy. And so a growing percentage of people, for a variety of reasons, know how to read and write, and they choose not to read. And a lot of people hate writing. So there you go. So on the one hand, it's reading aloud to children, but if people have lost the interest in reading, they don't read to their children, and so we lose out on the foundation there. Now, there's a lot of nice research beginning on page 12 and I think 13 about all the different levels of reading and how to choose books. And so books that feature clearly defined object and bright colors on a plain background are designed for babies and young children aged 0 to 2. This is, there's just not a lot there. And so we you don't want it cluttered, but clearly defined with bright colors to capture the youngster's eyes. Now, a picture storybook with a simple plot about daily routines, and familiar objects is designed for the child ages 2 to 4. Just a life around what is they're interested in, the things that are around them. And so you can pick routines, having dinner, familiar objects, the pet dog, whatever it might be. And as you get older, you come up with an age, we hear into the young adult, adolescent readers who like complicated plots, flashbacks, and symbols. These are the symbols in novels for children aged, and it's on page 13, 9 through 14. So you can see the level of complications goes up, whereas books for babies, very young, books for babies can be wordless, they can rhyme, but the most important thing about books for babies is that they promote oral language development by talking the book through. And this is something that's done with a parent, obviously. And so you develop that close relationship with the child and reading together with the child. And that promotes another foundation for literacy. Would just be that joy from talking through the book. Now, there are a lot of similarities and differences, and because of sociological aspects and other kinds of powers at play, the studies on general reading preferences have found that the greatest differences in reading preferences for boys and girls occur between the ages of 10 and 13. See page 13 for that. These page numbers will be on the quiz. Now, there's when they talk in there about selecting on page 15, when you're selecting books for children, readability. Readability refers to really how difficult the vocabulary and sentence structures are in a book. It has nothing to do with the overall length and how big the print is or how long words are, six by themselves. It's two things. difficulty of vocabulary, and sentence structures. And of course, those they don't take into everything, because readability doesn't take into personal preferences and things like this. And some of that has to do with when you're selecting books for children, conceptual difficulty. Okay, not just readability, but conceptual difficulty. That refers not to how difficulty the vocabulary and structures are necessarily, nor is it the overlength of a book or how long the words are. It's the complexity and presentation of ideas treated in the book, things like symbolism and things along. So this is this complexity of the plot, things along those lines. They refer to the conceptual difficulties, and these two have to be considered together when you're talking about books for children. There on page 14, there are a list of things, characteristics of books that matter to young readers. And when when the adult you is selecting a book, the one thing you look for a lot of things, like picture books and novels with illustrations interspersed throughout the book, stories with characters of the age of the intended reader or slightly older, short books and books with short chapters, so you can have that kind of thing. But what you don't really care about are stories with many interesting main characters. That doesn't add to the complexity, conceptual or readability wise. All the other things do. So you don't worry about that the story has to have a lot of many interesting main characters. And then our book ends, as we looked around a little bit in class, with all kinds of awards. And so you have a lot of those awards on page 18. And one of the main reasons, stated on page 17, one of the main reasons for establishing children's book awards is to elevate the standards in writing and illustration for children. So it's for the children. They are awarded, let's say, a Caldecott or for illustrations, or Caldecott is in the United States, and in the equivalent award in England is the Kate Greenaway Award. Both of these with Walter Crane. Kate Greenaway and Caldecott were famous illustrators in the first golden age of children's literatures, and we honor people for things like that. Book award, the most outstanding illustrations published in the previous year in England it's the Kate Greenaway Award, and in the United States it's the Caldecott Award. And now they're not there to make it so people will read more of a certain book. They're not necessarily there for pioneering work, but they're there to establish standards to elevate that may appear with someone who does something pioneering. But the overall thing is to elevate the books, and by offering awards, to do the things you can to elevate the standards in writing and illustration for children. And we want very high standards, not as we've seen in some of the picture books we looked at. The aesthetic value is very important. Okay, there are 17 quick questions there. You should do very well. I've also given you the page that the answer's on. And the quiz is just to refresh your mind and embed some things in there, and I'll be making another one, and we'll catch up pretty soon. Okay? I hope you all do a wonderful job.